Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! A month or so ago, I posted here the adventure of Linda trying to get me to open the access gate. Fortunately, Linda's daughter Victoria has been firm with her mother about her manners. Linda reached out to me with a profuse apology and flowers. While the flowers made my brother sneeze, Linda did seem repentant, and she was allowed over for the first time maybe a week or so ago. She behaved herself, so Victoria and I expressed our hopes that maybe she had learned her lesson. That was until last night. Victoria's brother-in-law, let's call him Kevin, was killed in a car accident a few days ago. Since Kevin lived in Texas, Victoria and the rest of her immediate family booked a flight to help arrange and attend the funeral. Since Victoria and I are next-door neighbors and friends, she gave me an extra copy of her keys and asked me to keep an eye on their cat, sort their mail, and just make sure things were okay at the house. I agreed because this was an emergency and I trust her to take care of our house if something similar happened. Yesterday morning, Linda knocked on my door and politely asked me to let her into Victoria's house because she had forgotten her prescription. Since I wasn't sure if Linda was allowed, I texted Victoria to make sure it was okay for her mom to go in. Victoria said it was fine and I let Linda in. While we were inside, I checked on their cat. I'll admit this was a huge mistake on my part. I was only gone for a moment before Linda said she found what she was looking for, even showing me the medication bottle she had misplaced. Satisfied, I locked up and Linda left. Several hours later, my brother Mark and I decided to go out for dinner because neither of us felt like cooking. When we returned, we saw that some of the lights in Victoria's house were on. I knew I hadn't turned them on, and those lights weren't on a timer to deter burglars. I called the police, explained what was going on, and asked them to come over and check because we weren't foolish enough to go inside and confront a potential burglar. Fortunately, there were a couple of officers, let's call them Warren and Leo, close by, so they came over within a few minutes. While we were explaining what was going on, who would come out of the door but Linda? She was wearing a bathrobe and had her hair wrapped up in a towel, which added to everyone's confusion. "Good evening, ma'am. Sorry to disturb you, but do you live here?" Linda, confused and looking like a scared rabbit, said, "I don't speak English," in Spanish. "Excuse me, ma'am. Do you speak Spanish?" He said that in Spanish. Linda's eyes lit up, probably thinking she had a way out. Speaking rapid-fire Spanish, she got close to Leo and was patting his arm like she was his mother, occasionally pointing at Mark and me. Warren, Mark, and I watched this with uncomfortable confusion. I don't know how Leo was able to keep his cool during all this because this was really awkward for everyone. Leo came back to us with Linda still clinging to him. Leo said, "A quiet borderline." She says she got permission from her daughter to come in to take bubble bath in their new jacuzzi bathtub and that you let her in. Is that true? My jaw dropped. I did let her in earlier today because she said she forgot something at the house. We went in and left right after she found it. I have no idea what she's talking about, but I do have her daughter's number if you want to talk to her. At this point, the color drained from Linda's face, and she let go of Leo, trying to edge back to Victoria's house. Leo stopped her and asked, "Is there something wrong, ma'am?" Linda then dropped her act. "Alright, I wanted to try out my daughter's new jacuzzi while she was gone as a reward for staying away when my daughter told me to. Victoria said she was glad things were getting better and I thought I'd treat myself. I got a quiet borderline to let me in earlier. While she was checking on my daughter's cats, I unlocked the back window and took an Uber here this evening to enjoy my bath because I knew those two would call my daughter or you guys with a convoluted story. I was just going to take my bath, clean the tub, and leave. My daughter wouldn't have even known." Okay, so to end this story, Linda spent a nice night in jail. Nobody was there or wanted to bail her out. Victoria is done with her mom's behavior, and I suspect she's going to ban Linda from the house for good this time. I learned that some entitled people are just too foolish to realize that just because you're getting along with someone doesn't mean you get to make the rules. A bit of backstory about me so you get an idea of my mindset. I'm a bartender on weekends and a university student on weekdays. I worked retail for 6 years and often go on autopilot when tired. I once thanked my fiance for shopping with us after she cooked dinner. Also, if you've never paid close attention to a long-time bartender before, we're pretty good at what we do and like to show off when mixing. My uniform is a long white shirt, a blue vest, and black slacks. Not the most comfortable uniform, so I often bring a t-shirt and board shorts to change into afterward. That's me in a nutshell. One Saturday afternoon, it's packed, absolutely bonkers because of the Australian Football League match, and I don't remember who was playing. The beer is flowing, the cheers are merry, and the roars are loud. Being the spirit mixer, or more correctly, the one who spends the most time around a rack of spirits, I'm mixing a whole bunch of rums for a party of 10. I yank the next bottle of rum off the shelf, tossing the empty at the recycle bin, and spin the top off. Not the smartest thing I've ever done in a 6-hour shift as I proceed to spill about 5 shots worth of Bundaberg Grum on the hem of my shirt, as well as my pants. I sigh but shrug. Spilled alcohol is par for the course on a busy day, and my manager knows I write it off. I finished my shift and silently thanked past me for packing a change of clothes. Well, the t-shirt at least. Fantastic. The t-shirt I packed was a deep blue with a decal on the front of a winged fox that read, "I don't give a flying fox." Tossing my rum-soaked top into my bag, I change and leave. Whatever, I'm only going to the nearest Big W, my old workplace, to get some more things than home. While browsing the confectionery aisle, I feel a presence behind me. Thinking it's someone trying to see what's past me, I mutter an apology and step sideways, tiredly weighing up whether I should buy the discounted cherry ripe bag or a block of Black Forest. While I grab a block of chocolate, the person behind me coughs in an "excuse me" manner. I say, "Sorry mate." I step further aside. I put the block back and grab the bag instead. Cherry ripe is better anyway. I feel a tap on my shoulder and turn around to see a walking nest of bleached hair and sunglasses that could make a fly jealous. Karen, I knew immediately. "Excuse me." There was more nasal in that voice than in an ear, nose, and throat clinic. "Can you help me?" At this point, I'm almost on autopilot, and the presence of this Karen flicks the switch. "Yes, ma'am?" She scoffs as if I have just picked my nose. "Pfft, you shouldn't use such a tone with a customer. Where are your light bulbs?" Obviously, not in a lolly aisle. I think to myself, I don't know, electrical? That way, I think. I gesture in the general direction of homewares and electrical goods. Karen's hands shoot to her hips, stabbing her foot. I stand there like a numpty, wondering what on earth she's doing. "Well, aren't you going to take me there?" "No." She throws her hands in the air. "Well, I never. The service here is terrible." She leans in to jab a finger at me, and I instinctively rock backward. "You need to take me there." Me finally suppressing 6 years of customer service. "Lady, I don't care what excuse you have. You..." She stops, and I notice her nostrils flare. "You're not slow, you're drunk. How dare you? Where is your manager?" Lady. "No, be quiet, you drunk fool." All this yelling brought an actual employee over. Let's call him Slim. He asks, "What's going on?" "How can you let an employee be drunk here? Are you the manager?" "No ma'am, but he's..." She cuts him off. "I only want to speak to a manager now." Slim turned on his heel and smartly walked over to the public address system, calling our floor manager to confectionery. He wimps out and stays at the registers while my old manager wanders over. Manager asks, "How can I..." She cuts him off as well. "Fire this drunk piece of trash." The manager looks at me, my Flying Fox t-shirt, my rum-smelling slacks, and my blank expression. She was used to seeing that after I finished work. "Miss, he hasn't worked here for years." "Yes, he does. Look at him." She jabs me in the chest and I stumble backward slightly, knocking some Kinder Surprises off the shelf. "You're just protecting this drunk jerk." "Ma'am, you need to calm down." "I won't until you fire this trash. How dare you let a drunk serve me?" Look at him. I can't believe you're covering for him like this. You're not very good at your job, are you? You should be taught a lesson about doing your job properly. I kid you not, this woman talked as if she was the manager's mother. She took a few steps towards him and began her journey to slap him. And as he was not a child, he got her hand mid-air, and she was pretty slow to be honest. Are you kidding me? Security, you're banned from the store, lady. Get out of here right now. Security guards came running in response to the manager's shout. She kept screaming that she would call the police for this discrimination. The manager stopped in front of her. She had the two guards at her sides. Look at his shirt, you silly woman. It seems she actually took the time to look at my outfit this time. Not the blue bin stripe business shirt the manager is wearing, but a shirt that's borderline offensive and yet cute at the same time. She flicked her hair in annoyance. Excuse me, I am late for an appointment. At 6 in the afternoon? The guards escorted her out while the manager watched her leave before giving me a sideways glance. I shook my hand slowly and just waved it away. Silly customers were something I dealt with at least once a week as a cashier. I bought my cherry ripes and drove home to play World of Warcraft. I once knew a young lad named Trevor, a young man who I regret not knowing better. Trevor, which is very much not his real name, was a more realistic version of what would happen to a Good Will Hunting type personality if he was raised in the rural Midwest. For those who don't know, the culture of Midwestern USA is not defined by football, wheat fields, or people chanting USA. It's defined by boredom, and all the crazy stuff people do is at boredom. The thing about Trevor was that he was insanely smart, though very much on the spectrum, and loved to develop skills that were honestly useless in 90% of the real world. Let's be real. As much as they make for awesome YouTube videos or TikToks, outside of burglars and secret agents, the ability to pick a lock in 6 seconds flat, parkour up walls, or know how to determine a security camera's eye line are not really skills that have much value in most 9 to 5 sittings. But Trevor had those skills. He had learned them from the early days of YouTube, from a forum that used to be owned by a guy known as Moot, from Something Awful. And who knows what other sites existed at the time that a person like myself has never heard of. He was also a Midwesterner, which meant he had the time, space, and boredom needed to get good at them. Now the thing about Trevor is that he went to a school that seemed to still be stuck between the satanic panic of the late 80s and the drug wars of the 90s. They didn't just have all those silly rules on the books. Such as no gangs of 5 or more can congregate. They actually enforced them. This led to poor Trevor, an avid hoodie fan, an odd loner who never could quite get a handle on social things, being an easy target for the administration. Trevor, being a child of the internet, really did try to do things the right way when it came to defying the absurd or unrealistic demands from the administration. When there was an unfair rule regarding shorts, he tried to wear a kilt, but not having the charisma needed to rally other students, he just made a target of himself. And the school just added another draconian rule to the books. Now, I'll never know where Trevor got his idea for revenge on the school, though I would not be shocked if it was from a very particular episode of Malcolm in the Middle. Apparently, after enough failed attempts to stand up to the administration, only to end up with just another draconian rule on a book, something clicked for Trevor. As mentioned, this administration was stuck in the past. Somehow, back in the day, a bunch of rural folks got it in their heads that all their pasty white preteens were all just one rap album away from becoming hardened gangsters and one vampire novel out from sacrificing their schoolmates to the devil, one puff of a substance away from becoming heavy users, and so on. So Trevor, with no heroes to turn to, decided to become the villain. And thus began Trevor's long campaign to make the school as unbearable for everyone else as it was for him. He began small, with little things scattered around the school. Rolled paper with odd-smelling contents scattered behind the gym, a bit of graffiti of some ominous-looking symbol at the corner of a utility shed, and so on. He mostly did these things at night, which, if anyone has ever lived out in the boonies, knows can get darker than if someone just blindfolded you. His main reason for this was to avoid getting caught with any of his little props during the day. Now that the school had suddenly implemented the bag search policy, with each little prop he left behind, the administration tightened their grip around the student body. Graffiti. I really use the term lightly. It was mostly just swears, written on walls and bathrooms in marker and pencils. Sorry, no more outside writing implements. You had to take an assigned number 2 pencil from the newly implemented communal class supplies and return it at the end of the class. No use of gym lockers or showers without the teacher present, which, for various reasons, led to a large number of sweaty teens, as most teachers, understandably, weren't volunteering their time to chaperone underage children showering. The gym teacher could not exist at multiple points in space at the same time. Computer room laptops, screensavers turned to inappropriate anime topics. That one was a twofer, getting both an entirely unimaginable permission system put in place, limiting computer access outside of class, as well as a general ban on anime, which naturally was very inconsistently enforced. Red-colored shoes with a black star in Sharpie on them. Red accessories are now banned, such as bandanas, shoes, scarves, and so on. I think Trevor was more going for a Red Scare angle on this one, but it turned into a gangland thing instead. This went on for quite some time, and so people's resentment built slowly but surely. I'd like to say that the stick that broke the camel's back was one of the many new dress code restrictions that were unfairly put against the girls, which, if the administration had gone on, would probably end up looking like nuns. But this is a Midwest after all. The real camel break was the banning of school phones from property. They were already banned from classrooms, but most people put them in their lockers. What pushed the administration to ban them outright was the discovery of discarded burner phones. In reality, Trevor had managed to get his hands on a bunch of very obsolete flip phones, none of them the same year or even brand, but all the right type of shabby to look like something from a cartel movie. He programmed some ominously vague-looking contacts into the phones, specifically one of them being the meat packer, and all of them leading to dead numbers. He then made sure to throw them away in optimally incriminating looking spots. If anything, the fact that all the phones were incapable of making outgoing calls anymore almost seemed to add to the paranoia factor. On its own, maybe even this rule would have been tolerated. This was a place where good old-fashioned values still rang true, and where people believed that kids should be spending less time with their noses in a screen and more time experiencing the grand virtues of the real world. All those empty fields and economically downturned Main Street, which was really just a strip mall, and abandoned garbage dumps. The thing is, the school had a very strict trespassing policy, one that actually predated Trevor's little campaign. There were exemptions, but not every student was on the swim team, so most kids had to kindly get themselves off of the property in an orderly manner. Here's the thing though, this was not the 80s, this was not the 90s. Parents had no interest in having to come on time to pick up their kids every day. They liked being able to text at the last minute and tell their kids to walk down the street and take the bus, or go home with a friend. This was one of those weirdly sprawling rural cultures, so school buses wouldn't and couldn't cover every hour. Yes, I know they are legally obligated, but let's not kid ourselves. Small towns are their own sort of crazy. And the idea that every parent in the student body had to now be punctual just wasn't all that feasible. Some families had both parents still working. A lot of parents were also salaried and could be asked, or strong-armed into staying later. Some parents just worked because they didn't want to go home. This started a chain of events that led to people asking the question, how come things have gotten so bad under this administration? The irony of all these draconian rules is that it made it seem like the school was in the midst of an epidemic. The school had been fine for years, but clearly something had changed there, and the current administration couldn't handle it. It wasn't an overnight process by any means, but within a decent stretch of time, most of the higher-ups in the administration were systematically replaced. Then, wouldn't you know it, all these big problems they were having seemed to suddenly clear up. No more graffiti, still plenty of substance use, no more gang paraphernalia, and no more of a lot more. The new administration was much more reasonable. That is to say, they stopped reporting and enforcing issues that might make them look bad and instead looked the other way whenever they could. Even anime eventually made a comeback. Thus, life went back to normal. As for Trevor, I'd like to say his story ended with him becoming a captain of industry or being paraded on people's shoulder through the town square.